Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here. A few weeks ago, during my budget address, I talked about the need to change our approach on housing. For many years, housing has been an issue that we've all campaigned on. Yet some of the solutions to this crisis haven't gained the support we need in the legislature. And when you look at the numbers, it should be yet another wake-up call. Just last week, the U.S. Census Bureau released data that continues to show our population decline. This isn't good news, and it's even more concerning that with our population decline, we continue to have fewer homes than we need. To address this, it's going to take all of us, my team, the legislature, developers, and local officials pulling in the same direction to change the trajectory we're on. And we have made some progress, like CHIP, or project-based TIFs, which Secretary Curley will be talking about in a minute. They're an example of one of the many tools we need to help reverse the trends we face in the housing crisis. CHIP, which launched last week, will give smaller communities a helping hand and gives us an opportunity to leverage up to $2 billion for infrastructure improvements to build more homes and revitalize our communities. We've also seen success with the VHIP model, which I've again asked the legislature to fund and make permanent this year. Another important tool we've designed is our successful mobile home infill program, where we've identified over 130 vacant mobile home lots across Vermont and have placed over 75 homes so far, with about half of these already sold for an average cost of about $95,000. Affordable homes can be found at affordablehomes.vermont.gov. Unfortunately, even with these programs and funding, it hasn't moved the needle quick enough because we haven't aligned our old regulatory system to meet current demand, which is about 30,000 homes over the next 4 years. After hundreds of millions invested, it's clear that money alone isn't going to fix this problem. And we're not getting the return on investment we need because it's still too slow, too difficult, and too costly to build here. We cannot rely on just spending our way out of this crisis. If we could, it would have been solved by now. That's why we desperately need more regulatory reform, which includes making changes to Act 181, the 2024 Conservation Bill, that over time will make it even more difficult to build and develop in many parts of the state, particularly in rural Vermont. There does seem to be broad support, which I hope will continue, for extending the interim exemptions and addressing other regulatory barriers to modernize Act 250 and make it easier to build in places that make sense rather than continue to have regulations which stifle growth, leading to higher costs for many. So I remain hopeful the legislature will work with us in a bipartisan fashion to take this action that needs to happen and this crisis demands. So with that, I'll turn it over to Secretary Curley.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. Earlier this week, Governor Scott, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and the Vermont Economic Progress Council announced that the application portal for the new Community Housing Infrastructure Program, or CHIP, is now open. This announcement represents the next step the state is trying to take to speed housing production while lowering upfront infrastructure costs that many municipalities have been unable to shoulder for decades. While the housing crisis we face remains and continues to impact Vermonters, employers, and the ability for families to move to our state, which puts incredible pressure on our schools, healthcare system, and local services, we have made some progress in the last 5 years. Here's what we've done. We invested. Over the last several years, Vermont has made the largest housing investment in state history. Since 2021, more than $700 million in state and federal funds have been directed to housing initiatives, which created around 2,000 net new units. Those investments help create, preserve, and rehabilitate or improve thousands of housing units across Vermont, spanning affordable housing, age-specific housing, substance use recovery housing, and moderate-income homes. We're unlikely to see this type of infusion of federal dollars again. So as the governor just said, money alone will not solve our housing crisis. We innovated by creating highly efficient programs that are driving unit creation and keeping Vermonters who do have homes in their homes. Through these programs, we help repair, preserve existing manufactured homes, bring vacant and unsafe buildings back into use, support small-scale local builders and homeowners, help finance homes for middle-income families, and quickly add new manufactured homes in existing communities. We've also used proven tools, including brownfields revitalization funds, the Healthy Homes Fund, and tax increment financing to activate private investment and clean up contaminated sites that are primed for housing development. We reformed. Since 2023, working with the legislature, we reformed local zoning, creating opportunities for more density, especially in areas with existing water and wastewater systems. We are in the process of establishing new statewide land use frameworks, though those reforms don't go nearly far enough, and we continue to push for change, which is something that Commissioner Farrell will talk to you about in just a minute. And this brings me back to CHIP and the barrier small towns face when trying to upgrade their infrastructure to allow for housing development. CHIP will help communities finance water, sewer, and other essential infrastructure tied to the creation of housing. It allows municipalities and developers to work together to unlock housing at scale and one project at a time, which will benefit more Vermont towns, especially our rural communities. At full scale, CHIP has the potential to support up to $2 billion in infrastructure investments by 2035, making it one of the most significant municipal infrastructure tools Vermont has ever deployed. For the average Vermonter, this matters because it means more homes for local workers, revitalized towns and village centers, and a housing strategy that is focused not just on spending money, but on fixing the systems that haven't worked. At its core, CHIP reflects what Vermont has learned over time. We need investment, we need modern rules, and we need faster, more predictable permitting. And we need local leadership to be empowered with the right tools. But it's not enough to stop there. We have to keep innovating and keep our focus on reducing costs and speeding up housing production. So the governor is again proposing reforms and investments in housing. Now I'll turn it over to Department of Housing and Development Commissioner Alex Farrell, who will walk you through this session's housing policy priorities and how they will help aid the true opportunity that CHIP presents.
Thank you, Secretary Curley. The administration's housing package, the governor's housing bill this year, is in essence, again, an answer to our internal question of what can we do to make it easier to build housing in Vermont, and what can we do to make it easier for small-scale or aspiring developers to become developers and add housing. So the progress we've made and the opportunity that we now have before us with CHIP is only going to be maximized if we intentionally unwind the unproductive aspects of our regulatory process and provide fast-track pathways for our home builders and developers of all sizes to build housing. So this year's administration housing proposals broadly fit into three categories. The first being reforms to rebalance Act 250, the second being municipal permitting and planning reforms, and the third being, of course, as the governor said, making the Vermont Housing Improvement Program, or VHIP, permanent. In the House, these proposals can be found in H602. In the Senate, they're in Bill S267. So on Act 250, we're once again proposing both large-scale changes to Act 181 of 2024, as well as very nuanced reforms. A series of targeted components to make Tier 1A and 1B more attainable and easier for municipalities to administer include making the Tier 1B automatically applied to municipalities that qualify, making it easier on municipalities who achieve Tier 1A by not forcing them to administer existing permits, as well as allowing those who are going to struggle with capacity to contract for that capacity rather than staff up during a time of lean funds. As a reminder, Tier 1A and 1B are the areas where there will be certain housing exemptions from Act 250 intended to make housing development easier. Outside of those areas, there is, at least to some extent, increased Act 250 jurisdiction. As of now, the current projections, looking at the process as it's unraveling, we're anticipating only about 2% of Vermont's land area being incorporated into Tiers 1A and 1B, these pro-housing areas. An important component of the Act 250 provisions in the administration's housing bill is an extension of the interim housing exemptions, which were included in Act 181. These exemptions have driven results in the form of projects scaling up, building more units, as well as moving faster. As of now, these interim exemptions are set to expire in January and July of this coming year. This bill proposes to extend that to 2030 to give enough time for municipalities to achieve their permanent Tier 1A and 1B exemptions. Without that extension, we risk a gap where there are no exemptions, there are no pro-housing areas exempted from Act 250, and we'll see a slowdown in a time of crisis, and we cannot afford a slowdown when we're already not meeting our goals. In the broader picture on Act 250 and the so-called grand bargain of Act 181, we're once again proposing to repeal the road rule, which, as a reminder, is an additional trigger to Act 250, which requires an Act 250 permit for any development, even a single-family home, on 800 feet or more from an existing road. In 2024, throughout the entire session, and in his veto letter, the governor was absolutely clear that in the balance that legislators were seeking between conservation and housing, conservation won out by a wide margin. The legislation that became Act 181 over the governor's veto missed the mark by far at the expense of housing. Now, just over 18 months into the implementation of Act 181, the coalition that advocated for the passage of the bill has real concerns that Act 181 is going to impede housing development in 80% or more of the state and will only provide pathways for substantial housing in about 2% of Vermont's land area. Now, we still have a chance to change course by repealing the road rule before its implementation this year in July, and by making other necessary fixes to an overcomplicated and flawed Act 181. Moving on to municipal planning and permitting, this bill includes two important provisions. First is a pathway to buy-right housing. Think of this as a fast-track option for small-scale and infill home building. Again, us trying to answer the question, how can we make it easier for new, emerging, and small-scale developers to do what they want to do, which is build homes. Leveraging an effort that's already underway at the Department of Housing and Community Development, there's a proposal to provide builders with a set of publicly vetted, open-source designs. These designs are being developed now in collaboration with communities across the state, and these will be accessible to builders to use once they're published at the end of this year. Our proposal is to make these pre-approved in residential zones across the state, essentially giving these builders predictability and reduced timelines when they choose to build from one of these designs. Second, a new component of municipal plans is proposed, which would require that a municipality demonstrate that their regulations and their municipal plan can accommodate their municipal housing targets. And if they cannot achieve them, the municipality is asked to document their constraints, whether that's state regulations, limited building sites, insufficient infrastructure such as water or wastewater, or any other limitation that would prevent them from building up to their housing targets. This creates not only alignment from state, regional, and municipal planning, but also creates a feedback loop so that we at the state can understand on the ground what's constraining our municipalities from achieving these targets, which we know, as the governor has indicated, we need to hit in order to reach our economic goals. Finally, we've heard the governor explain for years that when we do invest public dollars, we need to be strategic and we need to ensure that we're maximizing the impact of our housing investments. And perhaps the most innovative and effective housing program that's been created in recent decades is VHIP, the Vermont Housing Improvement Program. The stats are well known at this point. In just 5 years, it's created about 1,200 units at a cost to the state of just about $40,000. And for a second year in a row, the governor is proposing to make VHIP permanent by providing base funding in this year's budget. Without this predictability of permanent funding, it is likely that our state will lose this tool in our tool belt. We will no longer have VHIP, which not only creates new housing units, you heard the number 1,200, but it also reinvigorates neighborhoods. It provides housing for folks exiting homelessness and in Vermont's workforce at an affordable rate. And it's brought hundreds of Vermont property owners and new developers into the development of affordable housing. It's essential that legislators concur with the governor and make VHIP permanent this year. I'll turn it back to the governor.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll open up to questions.
Governor, on Act 181, why do you want to repeal the road rule? What are your main concerns there?
It's just unnecessary. I think there was a lot of pushback during that discussion. I remember Senator Sears was vastly opposed to the measure, and many along the way. I'm just not sure what purpose it serves. They talk about fragmentation, but I have a driveway that's 800 feet built there because that was the only piece on the property that I could build on. So since that time, I've seen an increase in the number of wildlife crossing my driveway, crossing my property, from deer and bear and porcupines and turkey and snapping turtles and painted turtles and osprey, and it's like a nature preserve there. But the driveway didn't impact them coming. The snapping turtles, they come up and nest during one part of the year, and they've been doing so ever since I've been there. So I just don't know what purpose it serves other than, I think, significantly impacting growth in the areas where we need that.
Is it also your position that you want to see lawmakers repeal Tier 3?
I think we need some changes to Tier 3. I think that they would agree. I think that's going to really impact the number of houses we can build in certain areas of the state, particularly rural areas. And I don't think it's fair to those sections of Vermont.
Can you say more about what changes?
We are open to working with the legislature. I think that we made our arguments during that conversation before it was passed. We registered our concerns, and I think they're proving out.
Where are you seeing or not seeing these proposed reforms to Act 181? Where is all this being held up right now?
In the legislature, you mean?
Yeah.
In the legislature.
Which committee?
All of them, particularly though natural resources.
What does your administration see as the appetite for the lawmakers to
I think it's mixed, but I think that, again, I go back to the last campaign season. Most campaigned on more housing, and now it's the time to step up and prove it. I just think that we need to really, when we have a crisis, which many have described our housing needs as a crisis, I would agree. When you have a crisis, you have to do things that are uncomfortable, and now's the time to prove that we can do things, even if it's for a certain period of time, to get back on our feet and get the number of homes that we need in place so that we can satisfy some of the other struggles that we have, the other challenges we face with workforce and so forth. So housing is one area that will unlock a lot of the other challenges that we face as well.
What's your assessment of how the LUR is doing since it was formed about a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I don't think it has. I think we had hoped, many of us had hoped that would unlock a lot of the struggles that we face. I think it's a little too early to determine whether it's a success or not. It faces its challenges as well. So time will tell. I mean, I think it's too soon to say one way or the other whether it's been successful.
I imagine some backers of Act 250 or people that were part of this coalition that got to yes, like passed the bill, overrode your veto, would say that Act 250, and I think the Senate Pro Tem has alluded to this, that Act 250 is not the issue, that there's other cost pressures in labor, in getting electricians to build houses, inflation, cost of materials. Can you just speak to those other elements of home building and to what degree these reforms you're pitching will really get at the heart of the issue?
Yeah, well, again, across the nation, there's a workforce shortage. I think the homes and home building is an issue that many states face, but not to the degree we do. And I would have to disagree. I think Act 250 was put in place to stifle the growth of infrastructure, the growth of homes and other things. And I think it was appropriate at the time to put that into place. But sometimes you have to release some of the control because if the goal of Act 250 was to stop infrastructure from being built and homes being built, mission accomplished, because that's what's happened. So we need to do something different, and we need to, as I said, we need 30,000 homes over the next few years. So we're going to have to do things that are maybe uncomfortable for some.
Chris Bray once described Act 250 as Vermont's DNA, I think. What would you say to Vermonters that are maybe worried that if we make these broad changes, that we'll lose a little bit of what makes Vermont Vermont?
Well, again, I think we can have both. I don't think it has to be one or the other. We went to one extreme with Act 250. It was fairly simple in the beginning. It's become more complicated over time. I think we still need Act 250, but there need to be some changes within Act 250 to not stifle growth altogether. Tier 3 is one area that I think will do that in some areas of the state. And again, I just don't think that's fair for those who are struggling to live in the rural parts of the state.
With a week to review the allegations against Windsor County Sheriff Ryan Palmer, do you have thoughts on whether he should stay in office or step down?
I would say from what I've seen and read, he's lost the trust of the folks in Windsor County, and he should step down.
All right, we'll switch over to the phones now. Keith Whitcomb, Rutland Herald.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Paul Hines, Boston Globe.
I also have nothing at this time, thank you.
Tough crowd today. Kevin McCollum, 7 Days.
Don't ruin this, Kevin.
Do my best. Can everybody hear me?
You can.
Governor, I wrote today in today's 7 Days newspaper about a big industrial park that is being proposed near the airport south of Morrisville, and I just wonder what you think about that project generally. There's a lot of neighbors in that area who are very concerned that that project would involve a quarry, that there'd be silica dust that would be spreading everywhere. And since we're talking about Act 250, Act 250 is the mechanism by which those residents are able to sort of ask hard questions about that project and its appropriateness for the area. So I know you're not a fan of some elements of Act 250, but generally speaking, Vermonters feel as though Act 250 is a vital way to ask tough questions about the impact of big projects on the environment. So I wonder if you could speak generally to that project. I know it's supposed to bring a number of jobs to the area, so I'm sure you're supportive of that, but where do you see the balance in the Act 250 fight up there?
Yeah, well, again, just as a reminder, I'm not suggesting that we ban Act 250. I'm suggesting that we make changes to Act 250 to allow for more housing, more development in the areas that need it. So that project in particular, I've read some about it. I think the blasting is probably the sore spot for many, but it would bring in much needed economic growth in the area. But I still believe that those who live in that area should have their say. And but the appeals process to stop the project if it's deemed safe to move forward with under certain conditions, that's where some of the problems lie. When you have too few who who can stop a project altogether just from an easy appeal. That's not fair to those who are trying to make things better, life better for those in Lamoille County. So we'll see what happens. I'm not following this in detail, so I don't have all the specifics. I just know broadly what I've read.
Okay. And can you speak again to the additional withdrawals of law enforcement officers from Minneapolis that was announced today? I'm sure that's something that you're supportive of as a step in the right direction going forward. But I think local officials want to see it happen more quickly. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I didn't see that. I didn't know that there was a major withdrawal today, but I think that is good news and a step in the right direction. And I think you just have to give everyone time to tone this down, take the temperature down, and it sounds like they're moving in the right direction. Some of the implementation of body cameras and so forth, I think that's good news. They should get rid of the masks as well, and then we'll see what happens. But I think that is all of it is a step in the right direction.
Thank you very much.
Ed Barber, Newport Daily Express.
Good afternoon, Governor. I'm going to turn to Act 73, and the issue is about student-teacher ratios. I know that you want to increase those ratios, which will provide for long-term cost savings. My question is based on the unintended consequences, which is, has there been any research done to see what impact the student test scores would have if you're changing student ratios by increasing them? For example, from 10 students to one teacher to 16 or 18 students to a teacher. Is there any statistically significant difference in test scores based on student-teacher ratios?
Well, thankfully, I have Secretary Saunders in the room with us. Maybe she can come up and answer that question for you, Ed.
Thank you.
It was a little hard to hear in the back, so I want to make sure I heard the full question. It was around the research basis around class size. Is that correct?
Yeah, what impact it has, if any, on the student test scores?
Yeah. So we've put forward research behind class sizes and looked at comparisons across other states. Certainly is evidence that we can achieve higher performance with larger class sizes. Also, part of what we've really been talking about is achieving scale. And if you talk to any educator across the state of Vermont, scale is really important to delivering a full range of educational opportunities and programs for students. And that's really what Act 73 is designed to achieve, is that we're operating at a scale in which we can ensure that our dollars go further in getting to the students and delivering the array of programming and meeting those educational quality standards that are in place.
So there is no statistically significant difference in test scores?
I can follow up to provide research. Anytime we're looking at reform, we're looking at class size. We're also looking at the quality of instruction, access to high quality instructional materials. So all of that factors in and is considered within Act 73. The State Board of Education is right now establishing the rules for the class size minimums. So that will be going through the rulemaking process to clarify the language that's included in Act 73 around how those class size minimums will be implemented. But we have published reports that are certainly showing where schools have high performance with larger class sizes. In fact, the methodology that we brought forward as part of the governor's proposal was an evidence-based model that is based on research and data around the elements that you need to have in your classroom and districts in order to deliver a high quality education system. And those variables also included ratios around class size, teacher to student ratios, and thinking beyond that around what additional specialized resources are needed to have in the system to support students in the classroom, to support teachers as well with ongoing professional learning and other support that they need. So Act 73 is much more comprehensive than just identifying class size minimums. It's intentional around funding a high quality system that is based on evidence, research, and data around those conditions that need to be in place in order to support high quality instruction that is equitable across the state of Vermont.
Very good, thank you very much.
Tim, Vermont Biz.
Governor, speaking of industrial parks, how come there aren't more in Vermont, and why has there been, when was the last time a real big one was developed? I mean, very successful in St. Albans Town and Brattleboro here in South Burlington. Why is it allows permitting, easier permitting, especially for manufacturers? Why has there been a staunch on that?
Well, I think for one reason, I don't think there's been the need in some respects. We have a number of those type of situations in different parts of the state that are underutilized, that are still in place. And we have, as you probably know, many buildings that are shuttered and could be utilized as well. So industrial parks are important in some areas. We are continuing to look at expansion in some areas, St. Albans, Franklin County being one, Lamoille and Johnson being another, maybe a micro industrial park there in Johnson. So I think there's a need, but we need to fill some of the spaces we have that are still available at this point.
Okay, thank you very much.
And we still need housing for all those folks that are going to be coming into the industrial parks so that we can expand. And again, a lot of businesses we speak to have said we would expand if we could find housing for our employees. Without the housing, we can't expand. So again, what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Gotcha, thanks.
All right, and we'll go back to the room.
Lieutenant Governor Rogers cast a tie-breaking vote yesterday in the Senate. Is there anything that you'd like to say about this moment on Treasurer's confirmation and Roland's confirmation?
Yeah, again, it was unfortunate we got to that situation, but I'm happy that the Senate prevailed, that the Lieutenant Governor made that really strategic vote that unlocked the stalemate. So hopefully that's behind us at this point. They'll be sworn in, and I think that over time that people will understand that these are the right choices for our Supreme Court.
Have Trisha and Nolan already been sworn in?
They should be sometime this week, I believe.
Separately, the Super Bowl is this weekend, and I wanted to ask about sports betting in terms of how that has played out for the state, and if there are any projections in terms of this weekend.
Well, again, I have our commissioner.
You're gonna make me get off this couch. Oh my God, there, I did it. I'm proud of myself. I did my ab workout this morning. James, thank you for the question, but could I respectfully answer that off this scene? Because I feel like there are much more pressing issues for Vermonters than the Super Bowl, and there are commissioners and secretaries that handle those much more pressing issues. Do you mind if we do that? Okay. Yeah, but we hope that we make more money this weekend, but not at the expense of problem gambling.
I just actually following up on James' question, I pitched this to a reporter this morning. You know that, I mean, you can bet on anything through like Kalshi and other, you can bet on politics, right? I mean, are we collecting any revenue through those other, streams, not just sports betting, but others?
Sorry, I tried. I tried. Oh, okay. So the only betting that's allowed in Vermont is online sports betting. We have a sports wagering catalog. We do not allow betting through the sports wagering apps, through all of these other things that you can bet on. You're talking about prediction market platforms like Kalshi and Polymarket, and that's regulated by the federal government, and people can go on an app, bet what they want. We have nothing to do with that. The state doesn't regulate that. Okay, are we done? Thank you.
Governor, would you, Representative Gina Galpetti, 20 other House members proposed a property tax freeze for 3 years and to cut spending across all agencies. Lieutenant Governor Rogers said yesterday he supports the concept. Even Emma Mulvaney-Stanek wants her department heads to propose cuts of 5 to 10%. What would you think of a property tax freeze for 3 years and directing your agency heads to give you proposed funding cuts?
Well, I think in my budget address, I talked a little bit about supporting the Senator Bruce initiative to put a freeze on property tax spending, so spending with the schools. So that was a step in the right direction to give us a bridge to where we need to go with education reform. So it's important that we make the reforms as well, because just restricting the spending isn't going to solve the problem. We need to make major structural reforms in order to do that. I feel the same, with state government. I think we have a process that we put a budget forward, and I think we don't need anyone to tell us not to spend money. We're mindful of that each and every day. So again, I think the executive branch should do its thing, legislature should do its thing, but they should consider Senator Bruce's initiative.
Act 73 also envisions school districts of about 8,000 to 9,000, I think. Does something in the neighborhood of like 2,000 to 4,000, does that achieve?
I'm not sure you're going to. I don't believe you're going to achieve scale in that respect. So I would let the experts talk about that. But from my understanding, it's just the smaller the number, the more districts we're going to have. We're not going to be able to achieve what we're hoping to achieve in this time of crisis.
Governor, how do you and your staff use generative AI as part of your work?
I don't use it only to ask questions that like an encyclopedia, but I'm sure that some of our staff is using that. I might find somebody else in the staff that could talk about that with you if you'd like, but I'm not the expert on the AI.
Are there any rules in your office about internal or external communications using?
Yeah, we want to be careful. We want to do the research because I'm not sure that. AI is a great tool to use, but we don't want to rely on that 100%. It's an assistance to us, but we need to do our own work.
What do you think about Senator Matos' casino bill?
I don't know anything about his casino bill.
What do you think about the idea of a study to see whether casinos are a good idea in Vermont?
I think, that would be fine. I'm not a big proponent of that. I believe that our character in this state is better protected in other areas. So we'll see where it goes. I hadn't heard about it, but we'll see where it goes before I weigh in too heavily.
The President this week floated the idea of nationalizing elections. As you know,
I think it's a terrible idea.
How come?
Well, I think you should remember who created the federal government, and that was the states. So these are states' rights, and I think that, again, the Constitution is clear on that.
So Senator Keisha Hinsdale proposed a vacancy tax.
You pay more attention to what they're doing individually. I don't.
Sorry.
I just want to warn you.
Okay.
I don't follow every bill that's introduced. So.
Simple concepts. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
The idea of a vacancy tax to shift burden for the property tax onto second home owners.
Yeah. Again, I'm concerned about those second homeowners, the camp owners, the deer camps, and so forth, putting more burden on them than they are feeling today. I think we should instead look at structural reform. If we had structural reform within the education system, I believe that our costs would come down and wouldn't increase at the rate they're going today. So I'd rather look there first and then make other changes as necessary after we do that. But let's focus on the structural issues that we face today.
There is a House bill on emergency housing and accountability program. Is this bill that you've been briefed on? I mean, I know that.
Again,
okay.
I don't follow. There's probably 1,000 bills that get introduced, and the vast majority of them never see the light of day, never come off the wall. They're to satisfy some constituent. So again, I just want to. We've put our bills forward. We'd like them to concentrate on them, and some of the structural things we're talking about today, some of the other structural reforms we need in education. There's a lot of areas that I would hope that they would focus on first.
What do you make of the idea of buying bus tickets for unhoused individuals that may have family or connections out of state?
Well, I mean, if they want to go and they have family and they have no means, I don't think it's a bad idea. But I don't know as we want to force them to leave. So it depends. It depends on the circumstances. Did you want to finish, James?
Just in general, kind of the emergency, like the hotel motel voucher program, you talked about how you want that to sunset. I mean, is there anything else that you're thinking right now in terms of sunsetting that program or anything like that in terms of emergency housing, John?
Yeah, we want to build, I believe that we should be moving in the direction, and that's what we're doing, of building emergency shelters, congregate shelters within the communities. So I think we would agree in concept together in the direction we're moving. But the hotel motel program itself was something that I believe was a mistake, especially to the scale that it became. So the sooner we can wean ourselves off from that, the better off we're going to be collectively. All right, thank you all very much.